All right, welcome to the West Division Preview Show. Tonight we have special guest Mike Cisco. Mike was with us last year when we did our Padres team preview show. So again, if you're watching tonight, thank you for being here. These are going to look a little different than last year. Last year we did 32 shows in 32 days, about an hour a
Still
night. It
insane.
was quite exhausting for me, and I'm just now getting over that physically and mentally, but what we're doing this year is every Friday night in February, we're going to do a division preview show. So we're kicking off this year with the West Division. So we're going to go over who's new to the rosters, obviously talk about some of the obvious names that'll be on each roster this year. And then at the end of the show tonight, I'm going to post this PDF that I'm looking at. It's going to have every roster, all 40 players for all 8 teams in the West Division. Mike is here. He's going to give us his expertise. We're going to talk a little bit about Major League Baseball as well. And we're giving Mike control, if you will. He's going to be the GM tonight for the Padres, and we're going to draft the final 2 roster spots for the Padres. That's going to belong to our guest, Mike. Mike, how are you doing? It's been
Good.
almost a year to the day.
Almost. Yeah, it's been great. How are you?
Doing
No, I
good.
should know. I've been following it online, so I know exactly what's going on.
Doing
Been
good,
doing
man.
really well. Yeah, I'm very excited. I would have been counting the days to pitchers and catchers, but right now we have no idea. But I'm still confident we'll get a season in, and it'll just start maybe a little bit late. But even if they got something done right now, wouldn't be bad. So
I think if
I'm
anything,
ready.
we'll probably not have a spring training. I think they'll move spring training into early April, and I personally think because it's never a good idea to condense it because they only get 18 days off as it is during the year. I think
Yeah.
we are gonna, if anything, if I had a prediction, and obviously this is not what I want, but I think it's going to be slightly shortened season because they're not even close. I think the latest headline
Yeah, the
is
last one,
the players are
they
like, we
just
don't want
blew it off.
mediation. We know what we want. It's either you
Yeah.
have to accept this or nothing. So I guess we'll see. But one thing I can guarantee is that in 49 days, which is 7 weeks from now, Utopian Baseball Universe is going to kick off on opening day.
See,
And
that's what I always have. I always have this. I always have MLB the Show. I've got my world of baseball. If they're not going to play for real, then at least I'll have mine. So
there you go. Yeah, we don't have
okay.
lockouts. We don't have strikes. We don't have steroids and spitballs and well, we're gonna kick off the show actually with the San Diego Padres. They were the representative of the West Division last year in the Utopian Baseball Universe. They beat the Giants in the West Division Championship Series on a steal of home. I actually rewatched that earlier today. I still can't believe that's how it ended. I was actually in that game because a lot of people will ask, well, what team are you controlling? And I actually choose 5 minutes before the game. So I'm not the same team for the whole series. I flip a
Right.
coin, and that night I was representing the Giants. So I think they were down 2-0 in the series or 2-1. And it was just like this freak play where uh, they pitched. I threw it back, and then it was almost like a delayed steal of home, and I couldn't believe what I was watching. I'm like, they're gonna do this on a video game. Like I know the game itself doesn't know what's on the line here, but I totally didn't see it. Padres scored the run. It was Chase Headley, who I think pinch hit late in that game. He didn't get the start that night, and I was like, okay, well the Padres are going to the table on a Chase Headley steal of home here. I guess anything can
I mean,
happen in the Utopian Baseball Universe.
yeah, because this has never happened in the real world. The Padres, they didn't make the playoffs last year, which is probably one of the biggest disappointments of this whole season for me. Um, definitely. I mean, as a Padre fan, you think you would be used to it, but there was such high hopes and such just energy throughout the whole year. Like, yeah, we can, why are we choking? Why are we have, arguably one of the greatest players in the game right now. And, every time he turned around, he was injured somewhere and just couldn't get the pitching right, but we even had such, some great moments. Nothing.
Yeah.
No, not even a playoff game. And if we ever did get into the playoffs, we just if we had to play the Giants in the first round, we would lose. And that's just the Padre history throughout the year. I mean, for any kind of important game against the Giants, and they beat us, which is why I don't have one of their caps because I still don't like them. I'd wear a Red Sox hat. I think the only other hat that I wouldn't wear would be an Astros hat. And that's I'm still pissed at them for cheating.
Yeah.
So God bless the Utopian League because at least the Padres got that win.
And again, that's I think the beauty of the Utopian baseball universe is that every team, although on paper, one team might look more stacked than the other, they have pretty much the same chance coming into a season to win. It's just how kind of the dice roll, if you will, or how the games from the past are shuffled. Last year we had, I think every division had one team make the playoffs that made it 2 years ago. So you had Boston, Cincinnati, the Angels, and the Braves were the only 4 of the 12 original playoff teams from 2020 make it in 2021. So that means that we had 8 new playoff teams last year, and that means pretty much anything can happen. We still have 12 franchises that haven't made the playoffs in the Utopian baseball universe, and it's going to be interesting to see which of those teams takes a step or two up this year in 2022. So, in looking at your Padres, your San Diego Padres, we've got obviously the obvious names are all back. Your Tony Gwynns, your Dave Winfields. Last year, one of the better rookies from the Negro League class that we brought in, third baseman Ray Dandridge, was probably one of the most, probably in the top 5 most productive third basemen in the whole Utopian baseball universe last year. So I think he's going to have a hold on third base for quite a while there. You've got actually, and I was telling you this earlier. I was rewatching our show from last year, and I don't know if you remember this or not. You were not too happy with Eric Shaw making the rotation, and he killed it last year in the playoffs. Like he put the team on his back.
He wasn't bad. When he was playing in real world. I mean, this is how bad the Padres are, or were, he was their starter. He was their number one. He was their ace. He's the guy who gave up the hit to Pete Rose, and then sat down on the mound. But, he was the best that we had until, the likes of, Peavy came around, or Andy Bennis, or one of those guys. And, again, it's just a tragic life for him. He didn't end up too well for him.
Yeah. And, we're not going to determine tonight starting lineups or opening day or who's going to be pitching even on opening day, but we're going to look at the roster. And again, you're going to have final say on a couple of these, and you might even convince me, not just for the Padres, but one of these other teams we talk about tonight, maybe where I got it wrong, or where we can make a case for another player that I haven't thought of. But because you are a Padres fan, we're going to look at the entire Padres roster here, and then for the other teams, we'll just kind of unveil everything later. But the new players that we're bringing in this year, that were under consideration, if you will, Bid McPhee is going to be the Padres' 19th century representative. So we're adding a 19th century player. I personally looked at second base as not necessarily a weakness, but one of the positions that could maybe use a Hall of Famer.
There's not a lot of options at second. I mean, besides Robbie Alomar, there's Bip Roberts and Robbie. That's it.
Yeah, and we got Alomar in Toronto. So we got Bip Roberts, Mark Loretta was on the roster the last 2 years, so we're going to keep him there. But I'm imagining Bid McPhee being a Hall of Famer is going to get the start on opening day. Again, Ray Dandridge did a great job last year. First base, we've got obviously a guy I grew up watching, Benito Santiago. Terry Kennedy, I think, is a household name if you're a Padres fan. And
absolutely.
Of course, Gene Tennis. We could have went whammy. So Gene, for as long as I'm doing the Utopian, Gene Tennis is going to be in there just because of the Anchorman fun that we can have with that as soon as he hits his first homer of the year. First base. And this is actually one of the great trivia questions in baseball because nobody gets this right. When people ask who's the all-time home run leader for the San Diego Padres, I wonder how many people know that it's Nate Colbert.
Yeah, anybody, from early 80s, late 70s San Diego would know.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think the casual fan or even maybe the younger fan probably is not even aware of who that is. So obviously Colbert is going to start the season at first base. We've also got Adrian Gonzalez. Ryan Klesko is going to get some at-bats. Now, we don't utilize a DH in the Utopian Baseball universe, but because it is kind of that National League style of baseball, you're going to get a lot of guys getting late at-bats in games, pinch hitting. Guys like Lou Gehrig and Cal Ripken don't even play every day. A lot of the bigger names are going to play most of the time, but you want to get all these names, a couple at bats, maybe one start a week. So we're going to give Klesko a chance at some point this year.
Oh, nice. Good for him. Good for him.
Shortstop.
He gets forgotten as the first baseman. He does. I mean, first of all, he didn't come in as a Padre. He was a Brave.
Yeah.
And then he was traded. And there have been a lot of great first basemen. Fred McGriff, Steve Garvey, Adrian Gonzalez. You've got all these great all-stars, guys who made such an impact. But Klesko was there forever. And, he doesn't get the credit he deserves, but I'm glad to see he's getting to play.
Yeah, he's going to get some ABs. Adrian Gonzalez actually came out of last year on fire. I think he actually led the universe in homers for the first 6 weeks of the season. And then in the second half, he just disappeared. I think he hit 5 in the second half of the season.
Very Adrian Gonzalez.
Yeah, so some of this is some of this is fantasy and some
right
of it,
out of real life.
Yeah. Obviously, shortstop Ozzy's in St. Louis. So we got Fernando Tatis, we got Gary Templeton, and we're going to add Khalil Green to the roster this year.
Okay. He was huge when he started. He was like, oh wow, this kid's going to be great. He's going to be incredible. But again, that was the level the team was playing at. And then as soon as God wasn't he didn't even last that long, and people were like, okay, he's in next. Yeah. Right. I felt real bad. I'm sorry. I sat next to his family once, and I didn't know it. I didn't know that this was his family. And the game was going on. It was here in New York. They were playing the Mets, and so I think he totally biffed one in the field. He totally just boom, balls over his head. And everybody around his family and me was like cursing him out and yelling at him and calling him, giving him the old New York welcome. And it's like he had kids and things like that there, and they're just like they felt so bad. And then to find out on the way out of the stadium, like, oh, that was his family. Sorry, Khalil. Sorry. Go San Diego.
I always have to be careful in the universe because now we're approaching 1,200 members. I never want to say anything too bad about a guy. I think I was doing a show last week and I said something along the lines of, how is Harold Baines a Hall of Famer? I don't know if his niece or nephew's in the universe. Like there could be a different last name or something like that. So I got to be careful.
Yeah, and that's a conversation that'll start a lot.
Yeah. So outfield, I think we've got some obvious names here. Obviously, Tony Gwynn. You talk about a guy who's going to get probably, outfield is one of those positions where I can get Gwynn a start every day, and it's not necessarily going to take at bats away from anyone else because, obviously Winfield's a stalwart, but like Greg Vaughn's probably not an everyday player in the universe. Then you got Will Myers, Trent Grisham, Derek Bell. So we could insert Gwynn pretty much every day and then get a good dose of Winfield and then have a little bit of a rotation. That's usually how it's going to be with a lot of these teams, unless your name is Willie Mays, Babe Ruth. I mentioned Gehrig
for me.
earlier.
Every time I play any kind of fantasy league where I can draft from, the Hall of Fame, and I can draft from the entire baseball history. I don't care what it is, who I'm playing. Tony Gwynn's my number one pick.
Yeah.
Period. Always. And everybody else will pick a guy who can get 60 home runs in the game. Someone who's just a power hitting crusher. And it's like, no, I will pick Tony Gwynn, and then I will pick Ichiro right behind him, because I will always get those guys on base, and I will always steal a base, and I'll always get them in scoring position, and I'll play small ball like that with those two heroes any day. But Tony Gwynn will always, from here until the end of time, be my number one pick.
I was thinking when I was creating these rosters, obviously teams like the Yankees and Braves and Dodgers and Cardinals have, legend upon legend, Hall of Famers galore. I think the San Diego Padres is an interesting franchise because I think Tony Gwynn, if you take a franchise's best player of all time and then argue who is number two, I think Gwynn might have the biggest gap between him and two for any franchise.
Well, but it's any position player, yeah. But I mean, Tony Gwynn, Trevor.
Yeah.
I mean, but Trevor was at the top of his game, but completely he's a relieving pitcher. But I mean, as far as anybody in the outfield or anybody, on the bases, yeah. I mean, I honestly would have to take a good, hour to think about who on the Padre would be second to Tony Gwynn, who was like not. And the other thing about the Padres is that if when I was writing down a list of who would I put in, who would I draft in these positions, if I can choose anybody who's ever been a Padre, like I could draft Greg Maddux, I could draft David Wells, I could draft a lot of Hall of Famers who just at one time or another had played for the Padres.
Yeah.
They don't stay there long. But Tony's one of the ones who not only came up as a Padre, stayed a Padre, and was there 19 years as a Padre and as Mr. San Diego,
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know anybody else who has played their entire career in San Diego.
Not for that long. I mean, there might be some guys that maybe played 10 years. Like Randy Jones, I mean, he's on the roster.
A Padre, but I mean, is he anywhere close to the level of Tony Gwynn?
No.
His barbecue is great. They got the same physique. But other than that, no way. I mean, the only other guy that I could think of would be if Fernando, who he didn't start as a Padre, but if he plays that whole 14-year contract, he will be considered a Padre for life. So, and he's on a trajectory to be, somebody of that kind of caliber. But, the player who's second to Gwynn hasn't even been playing yet. So,
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And, if you were to name, and I think two of them are obvious because we've just mentioned them. If you were to name like a Mount Rushmore of San Diego Padres all time, who would your four be?
Tony, Trevor, top two right there. Then, I mean, you could put in Winfield. You could put in. I would. It's funny. I would, consider putting in Jerry Coleman, the announcer.
Yeah.
Just because he was there forever and he was just such an awesome voice of San Diego. As far as a player that goes, that I would want to have on my team for ever and a day, I would go Gwynn, Winfield, and then a guy like a Terry Kennedy. He was a captain. He was a leader. You could even put in Bochy because he was the manager for so long. However, he left, defected, and went to San Francisco, which is another reason why I hate him. I would put in, I mean, because they've had so many guys come through like that, but I mean, I would put in a guy who was there when the team went to one of their championship World Series games, and that's either 84 or 98, so I would go with Terry Kennedy. I mean, his stats aren't there, but his leadership was.
Yeah. And all four are going to represent the Padres in the Utopian Baseball universe in 2022. One of the
Awesome.
guys I thought about adding to the outfield this year is kind of a lesser-known guy, Gene Richards.
Okay.
Do you remember him at all?
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, Peter Gallenbach was on my show last week or a couple weeks ago. He recommended that I buy this reference book. It's called Now Taking the Field by Tom Stone. And there's a lot of stuff in here. They talk about everything, every franchise, every position. And for those of you not as familiar with Gene Richards, he was primarily a left field, played 7 years for the Padres. He only hit 26 homers as a Padre, but he stole 242 bases and he hit 291. Played from 77 to 83. Good speed, swiped 30 bases 4 times, including 56 as a rookie and 61 in 1980. So we're gonna add Gene Richards to the outfield this year. Who would you add if you had a chance? We're gonna make you the GM right now. We've got Vaughn, Winfield, Gwynn, Myers, Profar, Grisham, Derek Bell, and Gene Richards. Now again, none of these are in stone except for Gwynn and Winfield and maybe Myers.
Right.
How would you improve this team that made the Final Four last year?
I would try and find one of those guys who came in, who could play for. He's possibly, he's a hired gun, or went the free agent route, or one of the big trades that they came through. And if they're not on another team, if they're forgotten by another team, then I would gladly come in and swipe them up. So I'm talking about Steve Finley. Is he playing for the Astros, or is he playing for here?
Steve Finley is actually on the Diamondbacks roster.
All right, fair enough. He's got to go somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. What about Joe Carter? Toronto? Okay.
Yeah. I got to tell you, and I mentioned this last year, building the rosters was the hardest thing in creating this universe because, number one, you're going to have 100, 200 players that could easily be on one or two teams. Oh, yeah. Like you're splitting hairs. Like Randy Johnson was the big one. It's like, do I go Seattle or Arizona? And I went Arizona.
There's got to be like either one or just maybe two main guys that you recognize them with. And it's just why I understand why Steve Garvey will never be the first baseman for the Padres, is because he is identified as a Dodger, even though he is one of the best first basemen we've ever had.
Yeah,
but I get it. I understand. Finley, though, for me, the Diamondbacks need somebody, so
they need some live bodies.
Steve Finley. Yeah. See, for me, Steve Finley, he was such a key part of that 1988 or 1998 team.
Yeah.
He's just got tremendous power. He was great in the field, and I was kind of hoping against hope that maybe Steve Finley slid under somebody's radar this year, and there's so many other guys that they got drafted ahead of him. What about these guys? They're currently playing on another team, so they'll probably be on those rosters. But Manuel Margot or Hunter Renfroe?
Who was the first one?
Margot.
I don't have either of those gentlemen in the universe, so Mike Cisco has final say.
I would take Renfroe.
Renfroe?
He did great last year. Yeah. He's a guy that I never want to, I would never want to see, on the other team. He's been killing it.
He is, correct me if I'm wrong, and, again, with the lockout, my focus has been the universe and not MLB. Hunter Renfroe's in Milwaukee now, isn't he? Or am I thinking of someone else?
He was in Boston.
But he was traded to Milwaukee.
Is why.
Wasn't he traded to Milwaukee in the offseason?
Oh, yes, he is. Yes, he did get traded.
He was traded for Jackie Milwaukee. Bradley went back to Boston.
Why did they do that? Why did they just?
I don't know. I
get that
love
one.
Jackie.
I don't know.
I love Jackie Bradley before he became a Brewer. He was one of my favorite Red Sox, and when he came here, I was like, "Oh, that's great." And now he's
Yeah, well, I mean, Hunter can hit, 30 home runs a year. He can, I'd like to see him hit a little, better than
sure.
250, but I mean, he's got some power. And if I got to have somebody in the outfield, and I've already got my speed taken care of with Gene Richards, I'm going to go with Hunter and can get some pop in the bat.
Well, there you have it. Hunter Renfroe is joining the San Diego Padres via Mike Cisco. Um, so again, to round out that outfield, we got Gwynn, Winfield, and Vaughn, Myers, Profar, Grisham, Bell, and new this year, Gene Richards and Hunter Renfroe. And
Not bad.
Mike's going to get a chance here in a second to choose a starting pitcher. Now, again, we don't have the rotation set. We're actually going to have a 16 game spring training kickoff on February 28th, just to kind of get my writing muscles limber again in my process. But the pitchers that have already been determined for the roster and not necessarily the rotation, again, some of the obvious ones: Jake Peavy, Eric Shaw, who
Yeah.
killed it last year in the postseason, Dave Dravecki. I don't know if you remember, he threw that perfect
Oh,
game
yeah.
2 years ago against Seattle in the Utopian. Randy Jones, and then some of the more current Padres: Dinelson Lamet, Joey Lucchesi, Clayton Richard, and then, of course, Mr. Musgrove from last year through the no-hitter. The first
First
no-hitter in
no-hitter in
San Diego
history.
Padres history.
From a guy from San Diego. That was
Isn't that
I think the
cool?
best part about it. He went to my neighbor high school. He was in my school district. He lived, within 10 miles of where I grew up. Um, to have them paint a mural back on his high school, incredible. I mean, that just it couldn't have been scripted better for the first, and probably, going to be a big long time between the next one. But I mean, at least we can say, that one's off the list. I mean,
Yeah,
I hate, to be a Mariner fan because, people always just, you've never been to the series. You've never been to the series. People could always throw that no hitter in front of a Padre and say you've never pitched a no hitter. And other teams have done it, dozens and dozens of times, and
sure.
they never had one. That was an incredible moment.
And the Brewers, I
One
know,
of
was
what,
it?
nine?
What's that?
How many did they have last year? They had like 9 no hitters last year.
I think they were on a pace to like shatter the all-time record. I think they had
Yeah,
like 6 at the All-Star break or something like that.
yeah,
Uh,
that was
all right, so starting pitching again, we have one to fill. Last year, when we were doing this show, we were talking about all the Andes that have pitched for the Padres:
yes.
Bennis and Ashby and
Bettis,
Hawkins.
Ashby.
None of those guys are represented here. We've got Ed Whitson. We've got
I've got all of them on my short list.
yeah,
All and Hawkins, Bennis, and Ashby are all at the top of that short list. But I mean, I do want to know. I mean, like I said, we've had so many great pitchers, come through there at one time or another. Usually either at the start of their career or on the way downward slide. Like,
yeah,
so I mean, I'm assuming Greg Maddux is on the Braves or the Cubs, but yeah.
yeah.
But
Maddox,
people still forget he was a Padre. He put
yes,
on that uniform, and not just for one season, but for like 2 or 3. Same with Fernando Valenzuela, and those guys are all Padres. David
yep,
Wells from San Diego, but will never be remembered as a Padre.
sure.
Kevin Brown, is he anywhere?
Kevin Brown is representing. Okay, well, all right. So now this could be a first. This could be a first, and I don't know. I wasn't anticipating this happening, but we're just going to talk this out because this would be a
Okay,
first. I had Kevin Brown on the Rangers in 2020. He
okay.
pitched he pitched terribly in 2020. I think he was like 1-8 or something like that. And then last year we added Yu Darvish, who and I apologize. I left him off the 2020 the whole Utopian, because I'm an idiot. So you Darvish joined last year. We added Lance Lynn last year, and we added C.J. Wilson. So Kevin Brown is currently not represented. However, one of the things that I said at the creation of this, and this we could even go back 7 or 8 years when this was just a seed in my head, was I didn't want to see like free agency and trades and all that, because I didn't want to. I think of a young fan. If we have, let's say, a young fan of the Utopian Baseball universe, and they have a favorite, I'll
Yeah.
mention a friend's son. Last year, my friend Jessica's son Max loves Francisco Lindor, loves him. They're big Browns fans, Indians fans. He gets traded to the Mets. She texts me and says, Max is not too happy about this, and I said, hey, let's get Max on the show tonight. And I'm going to assure Max that Lindor remains with Cleveland for the rest of time in the Utopian. So now, again, I don't want to disrespect Kevin Brown. I don't think there's anyone in the universe that is going to be heartbroken if Kevin Brown were to switch teams. Now, again, I'm not.
Well, I mean, if he's even softly spoken for, I mean, Kevin just had one tremendous year with the Padres, and if I'm going to stack a team, I want a guy who went 18-7, but that being said, part of me thought about, what about a guy like James Shield? I would put him on there just to spite the team, or despite, the White Sox for trading Fernando Tatis for James Shield.
It would be interesting to get them back together, but I do have James Shields actually on Tampa Bay.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
And I think it was
Clevenger
again because
is in Cleveland, or is he coming back?
Who's that?
Clevenger. Mike Clevenger. Long hair hippie.
Yeah, I actually don't have him represented.
He's definitely a thought, because I have faith that his Tommy John surgery went well, and that he was the missing component from the team last year. That a rotation of Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, Mike Clevenger, and now Musgrove, that will be a formidable 5-man rotation. But do I want that as my pick? I pulled it down to Andy Bennis or Andy Hawkins. Simply because those were the guys that I most liked watching pitch when I was a kid. I was a little hurt after Andy Hawkins went to the Yankees, simply because he had such an amazing year in 1985, right after the Padres went to the World Series. He came out of the bat and was like 11-0 at the All-Star break. And that All-Star break after the Padres went to the World Series, the entire infield was Padres.
Yeah.
It was, except for second, I don't think second base, but we had Steve Garvey, we had Gary Templeton, we had Greg Nettles, we had Terry Kennedy at catcher, we had Tony Gwynn out in right field. For an all-star team, it was really the Padres and a couple other guys. And Andy Hawkins was just, killing it that year, and we thought this was going to be another year of going to the playoffs.
Yeah.
But when Andy Bennis came out, everybody was like, this guy is going to be the next one. This guy's going to be such an amazing team. And he was. He was this great, great pitcher for many years. I'm going to take Andy Bennis.
Andy Bennis. Now, well, and let me ask you this, because Andy Bennis is the pick.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that I mentioned in that rotation that you would take Clevenger over? Like, I'm just drawing off.
I would take Andy Ashby over Clevenger. I think they're the same pitcher from different years with shorter hair.
Okay. Would you, because I have room for 9 starting pitchers, and based on how they've done or just career resume. We're obviously keeping PV, Shao, you can't get rid of Dravecky at this point. The guy threw a perfect game. Randy Jones won a Cy Young. Do you want to go Ashby over a Clayton Richard, Lamette, or this is going to be your call?
I'm thinking that I love Lamette. I think he's got a lot of stuff. I mean, him as their fifth starter was not a problem for me. I really enjoy watching that guy pitch. So I'd want to keep him. I would take an Andy Ashby over Clevenger. And Clevenger could go to the Indians if he needed to.
Well, keep in mind,
But yeah,
so we can only add one unless we get rid of someone else. So we added Bennis.
Yeah.
So if we add Ashby, we have to get rid of either like Rich. I think Richard is the only one we could drop at this point because you're not going to drop PV Jones.
No.
You know what I mean? So I guess it would come.
No, I mean
Ashby or Richard.
Oh, I'd keep Richard. Keep the speed. I'm fine with that.
Keep Richard.
Ashby is nice, but he still had a losing record when the season's over. But I mean, he was.
And keep in mind too, like we're constantly going to be updating rosters. Like next year, we're gonna, we're gonna look at this year's stats and go, okay, it doesn't mean that a guy's gone forever. Like if we get rid of like this year we dropped. Or no, 2 years ago we dropped Kevin Brown from Texas. He could come back at some point. But all right, so to sum up, we're going to add Hunter Renfroe, and we're going to add Andy Bennis, and then we've already added Musgrove, Gene Richards, and Bid McPhee. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the bullpen, and then just quick brief looks at what we've done for the other teams. But obviously, we got Hoffman, we got Goose Gossage. We've got Drew Pomerantz, we got Mark Davis, Craig Lefferts, Emilio Pagan, and Brad Hand. Is there a name I'm leaving out that's obvious?
That's kind of the best ones right there. You got Cy Youngs and your second, all-time save leader. I wouldn't put anybody else up in there. I mean, Pomerantz too. I mean, he was doing Brad Hand. I mean, these are all guys that easily could close out any team, and here they could be in the setup. So that's a solid bullpen right there.
All right, so that's what the
and gotta love Craig. Gotta love Craig getting in there.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's the thing too. It's not just the all-time greats. It's favorites. It's characters. It's current stars. Like when I initially built these rosters,
he was part of San Diego.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was great.
But, that's the first thing after I got all the obvious names in there, and I did all of that off the top of my head, the Ripkins and the Ruths and the Mazes. I went to my baseball card collection. I'm like, all right, I got to get John Denny. Ooh, I got to get Buddy Biancalana. I got to get some of these characters, if you will.
Got to get Kurt Bavacqua.
Kurt, now that's an interesting name. I don't have Kurt Bavacqua in the universe. We got to find him a team.
And you do. No, he's good. He can watch the games with the rest of us.
He could be a color commentator somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on then to another team. We're not going to spend, obviously, 40 minutes in every team in case people, I know it's Friday night. People have things they want to do, but this is the center of the universe right now. This is the West Division preview show with Mike Cisco and myself. My douche haircut. Little midlife crisis going on here. Little CM Punk thing going on. Let's look at the Seattle Mariners. Again, the obvious names.
It breaks my heart.
If you look at a Mount Rushmore, obviously Griffey, Ichiro, Edgar Martinez.
Who do you put in? Do you put in Randy Johnson or A-Rod?
Well, I put A-Rod on Seattle. I put Randy Johnson on the Diamondbacks.
There you go.
So some of the names we added, actually, the Mariners made a big splash in the offseason and signed Rube Waddell to be one of the anchors of the rotation. Last year, I don't know if I don't even know if people remember this because of what happened in real life, but Trevor Bauer was the prize of last year's free agent class in the Utopian Baseball universe. He was actually signed by the Seattle Mariners. And then when the Dodgers suspended him or whatever they did, I'm like, you know what? I can't have him. I can't celebrate him right now for obvious reasons. So the Mariners have signed Rube Waddell, Hall of Famer, is going to get the start on opening day against Montreal. We've added two additions to their bullpen this year. Guys that had solid years last year, Paul Sewald and Drew Steckenrider. And then we're going to add the kid who's actually from Waukesha, Wisconsin, was drafted by the Mets, made a little bit of a splash late last year, Jared Kalenic. And the Padres also adding Carlos Guillen and Ken Phelps in 2022. And again, this is a 40-man roster, so it's not to say that all of these guys are going to be on the opening day roster on March 25th, but I'd imagine the two guys in the bullpen are going to make the team. I can see Kalenic maybe getting some at-bats out there. Obviously, Rube Waddell is going to start on opening day, and we'll have to see where else we can get some guys some at-bats. But if we're looking at a projected lineup, we're probably Biz Mackey, Hall of Famer from the Negro Leagues, is the catcher in Seattle. We got Richie Sexson, Brett Boone, A-Rod, very talented outfield, Ichiro, Ken Griffey, Jay Buhner, Felix Hernandez, Jamie Moyer. So there's talent here. I mean, on paper, this is a very talented team.
They've had just great teams. Just can't get to the finish line. And it's a shame. They have a beautiful setting. They have a beautiful stadium. I mean, even the Kingdom was hard. The Kingdom was just probably one of the worst places to ever see a game. They had stuff dripping from the ceiling. I mean, it made Veteran Stadium in Philadelphia look like a palace. It was so awful. But Safeco, or now T-Mobile, or whatever they want to call it, but I mean, was one of the most beautiful stadiums I've ever stepped foot in. It's right on the water. It's gorgeous, and it's everything that Seattle should be. And they've had so many great teams playing in there, but they can't get it done.
Yeah.
I mean, they had 116 wins in a season and couldn't get to the World Series.
Yeah. And they've struggled a bit here in the first 2 years of the Utopian, but again, let's see if they can get a quick start in 2022 as they open up against the Expos on March 25th. Colorado made a.
Well, do you have some of the? Do you have a couple of like the all-time guys like Alvin Davis or Dan Wilson?
Oh yeah, we got Alvin Davis for sure. I don't have Dan Wilson, but I could add Dan Wilson because I have Dave Valley as the third catcher. You want to go with Dan Wilson?
Yeah, you have to have Dan Wilson. Dan
All
Wilson was, when I was living in Seattle, he was, as big as A-Rod would be.
Dan Wilson's a Utopian Baseball Universe Seattle Mariner.
There we go.
Let's look at by the way, if you're watching this right now, if you end up on these preview shows, you get say in these rosters. If you can't make the show, then I don't know what to tell you. So Mike Cisco is our GM tonight. The Colorado Rockies made a big splash in this offseason, signing Hall of Fame catcher Ernie Lombardi to be their starting catcher. That's a big upgrade because they were going with like Elias Diaz and Chris Iannetta. Andy Messersmith signs with the Rockies, and then some modern Rockies, Brad Haupt, Ramiel Tapia, and Garrett Atkins have been added to this roster. These guys are going to hit Todd Helton, Trevor Story, Nolan Arenado, Charlie Blackmon. These guys are going to hit. Can they put it together? Can they get the pitching?
Again, another franchise that just, when you think of some of the players who've gone through there, and especially, I mean, what killed me is when they started and when they launched, when they expanded, and they quickly made the playoffs within like 2 years. And it's like, really? Padre fans, were out of their mind. It was like, how do you do that in 2 years? You're supposed to have these, building years.
Yeah.
But Tulowitzki, Galarraga, Arenado, Vinny Castilla, all those guys. I mean, just some really, really talented players coming through that team. I mean, you got a lot to choose from.
Yeah, and it's again on
Oh,
paper. And then last year they got a no hitter out of opening day starter Rube Foster. That was the Negro League draft pick for the Rockies last year. He's going to start an opening day this year. You got Ubaldo. Colorado's actually thrown 2 no hitters in the Utopian. They're one of 2 franchises that have thrown 2 no hitters already: the Phillies and the Rockies.
Gosh, these
Uh,
guys.
yeah, Arizona also signing a free Hall of Fame catcher to their roster. Buck Ewing is going to be the opening day catcher for the Arizona Diamondbacks. They've also added AJ Pollock, Dalton Varsho, Dan Herron, and Miguel Batista to a
All
team
right.
that, again, has talent. You got Randy Johnson, Zach Greinke, Kurt Schilling, Brandon Webb, Paul Goldschmidt, Luis Gonzalez, Jay Bell. I mean, again, I'm not saying this is the Yankees, but the way we simulate here, if
Well,
the
these are
team
the
gets
guys that beat
hot,
the Yankees. So
yeah, the irony there. So, adding, we're trying to get Hall of Fame names on every franchise so that at least on paper you can say, yeah, like
where
if this were to happen, I can see this team getting hot.
where did you put Goldschmidt? Is he here or is he on the Cardinals?
Arizona.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
Because
I like him on the Cardinals. I mean, I really do. I think
yeah,
him and Arenado on the corners. I mean, that's just the
sure.
best, first, second, first, third. But he's still in my head. He's still a Diamondback.
Sure. And like, I'm not going to get, Paul Goldschmidt's not going to get starts over Albert Pujols in St. Louis in a utopia.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's right. There you go. Yeah.
All right. Let's look at the Oakland A's, who didn't make a ton of moves in this offseason. They did sign Hall of Fame second baseman Cupid Childs. Cupid Childs played in the 19th century. He's going to be, I guess, a little bit of an upgrade there at second base. Harry Davis, another old-time player. A lot of the players that they brought in were kind of older players. But here's a familiar name from the 70s and 80s, Dwayne Murphy, going to make his debut this year for the A's. And then adding Steven Biscotti, Tim Hudson, and Chris Bassett, who pitched pretty decently last year for Oakland.
He was, I mean, in the real world, he was on my fantasy team, and he was my hidden gem until he got hit in the face. And then even when he came back, I mean, I was all prepared to drop him and put a new pitcher in, but I gave him that shot when he came back, and he killed it. He was great. It's a shame to see what Oakland is doing this year to their team. It's nice to be on the receiving end of some of their talent.
Yeah.
It
Got a
may come to
manager out of
the
it.
Yankees. Yeah, the Padres got the manager. The Mets got 2 players, and we may pick up Matt Olson and the Yankees. So
Yeah.
that's great. But I mean, the thing that I do love about the A's though is that it doesn't matter if they give that team away. The way they build a team around the metrics versus going out and buying that billion-dollar slugger. They will put a team together that will be competitive.
Yeah.
It may take a couple of years for them to gel, but within the next 2 years they will be back to the playoffs. So
Yeah.
they'll be fine, but it's a shame to be a fan, and to watch them, and then to hear them say, "Well, we may move to Vegas," So
Well,
never want to
and
see that.
if you're an A's fan watching this, I can assure you that the A's will remain in Oakland in the Utopian Baseball Universe. Hell, I even gave them a new park last year. I took the renderings of that Howard Terminal ballpark that had been floating around for 5 years, and I said that's where they're playing in the Utopian. So
I actually like their ballpark.
Yeah.
Even though I mean, I saw Ricky Henderson steal his base, against the Yankees there, and I love how they call it, Ricky Henderson Field.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
love that they could land an airplane in the foul lanes, and I mean, there's something about it. It's one of the greenest ballparks I've ever seen, and they always play great baseball there, and the fans are fantastic. It's just a shame that you're in competition with the Giants in the Bay Area. You're in Oakland versus San Francisco, and it doesn't have the same draw as someone hitting a ball into the bay.
Yeah.
So When they were playing in Candlestick, it wasn't a choice. I'd rather go to Oakland any day.
Yeah.
Candlestick was awful.
I would love to see both of the parks we're talking about. I've actually never seen a baseball game in California, and I would love to see all of those stadiums at some point. Even Oakland.
That would be a fantastic summer tour, just
Yeah.
up and down the coast.
Yeah,
That would be amazing.
just hit them all. So we'll segue into the Giants, who made some big additions this offseason, some older names, some more current names, adding a catcher, Chief Myers, to the roster. He's going to be joining Buster Posey and Benji Molina in San Francisco, adding a second baseman named Larry Doyle, Freddie Lindstrom, Travis Jackson. These are all older players that are going to get some at-bats. And then a notable guy who was actually the Mets hitting coach last year for a time, Chili Davis.
I love Chili.
I love Chili too. He's going to make his Utopian Universe debut next year with the Giants. This is a loaded outfield. You know, you're not going to get too many at-bats behind Mays and Bonds and Mel Ott. This is one of the few outfields in the Utopian where if you're the fourth outfielder, it's pinch hitting. It's the second game of doubleheaders. You know, so we got like Kevin Mitchell and Jeffrey Leonard and Orlando Cepeda. These are great players.
Those are some fantastic players.
Oh my God!
Wow, Jeff Kennett second. Of course.
Jeff Kennett second. We got Robbie Thompson. This is one of the most talented franchises on paper in the universe. Pitching, we haven't even talked about pitching yet. Christy Mathewson, Madison Bumgarner, Matt Cain, Carl Hubble, Juan Marichal, Tim Lincecum. They're going to add Logan Webb and blast from the past Joe McGinnity. We've even got John Montefusco.
Do you remember those A's pitchers? God, those A's teams, and there's the A's and the Giants were just going back and forth between, who was the best in the league in this.
Yeah.
The A's had like three, they had all those rookies of the year, and then they had all of those Cy Young winners, and they had, and then the Giants had Lincecum. I'm like, oh, all those teams were just so good. Again, being from San Diego, that's why we hated them, because they were so damn good. And you were just like, wow, we got Jake Peavy on a good day, and you guys had Cy Young after Cy Young after Cy Young.
One name that we're going to add to the bullpen this year is Tyler Rogers. He pitched very well for the Giants last year. Someone thought that was funny.
That would be my son. He's having his good old time. He's doing his thing.
All right, so we got two more teams here to look at. We're going to look at the Angels, who are going to add. Oh shoot! Oh,
what happened?
I just have a cramp. This happens from time to time if I sit too long. I got to stand. Oh, I hate it when it happens on live. Like, even though we have like. All right, just give me a second here. Oh,
no worries.
All right.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right, so we're going to add we added actually Fred Clark, who played in the 19th century, and then we added Lyman Bostock, Nick Aidenhart, who unfortunately we lost several years ago. He's going to get a chance at immortality in the Utopian baseball universe. And then we're adding Jared Walsh and Dick Schofield.
Oh, wow.
To the rosters in 2022. And then for the Dodgers, a lot of older names, some more modern names. We're going to add Jim Gilliam, Dolph Camilli, Zach Wheat, Pedro Guerrero.
Love that guy.
Andre Ethier, and then two pitchers that I really enjoy, Ramon Martinez and Walker Buehler.
Love Walker. Love it, but just because I like saying Bueller.
All right,
but
so
love those guys.
That's pretty much everything that we're adding. We're gonna upload, like I said, we're gonna upload this entire PDF. Everyone in gray is going to be new players added. As we get closer to opening day, fans of all these teams will have say in how the rotations look and how the final opening day rosters start to look. So yeah, I hate to pull a plug on this a little bit early, but I'm in a lot of pain right now. And,
Take care of yourself, man.
No,
it's a long season.
It just happens from time to time, and I think I've just been sitting too long today. So,
Yeah, no, I hear
Mike,
you, man.
I want to thank you for being on the show tonight. And
thanks for having me.
if you guys want to check back in about 10 minutes, we'll get this information up. I apologize for the kind of weird ending tonight, but I can't even stand. But Mike, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, man.
Love always having you on, and I'm sure we'll talk to you as we get closer to the season.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
All right, take it easy, guys, and thanks, Mike.
Take care,
and
man.
We'll see you guys tomorrow night for Game 7 of the 1991 World Series, as we're going to stream the Braves and Twins at 7 o'clock tomorrow. See you then.
Take care, man.